Hello, and welcome back to another fun-filled episode of the Hammercast. I'm your host, Alex, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin, and I am joined once again by my friend Grizzly Adams, aka Pat Flynn, coming in the clutch with a super manly beard, which he did not buy at a discount beard store. That is all natural, folks.
What do you think of the hair right now, Alex?
The hair, you know
Christine
what, the
says I'm
beard.
starting to look a little like Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
Well, you know what? The beard distracts from it, honestly. This reminds
Right,
me
yeah.
of an advertisement I saw once, and it was like a guy with like a missing front tooth, and he was with his family or whatever, and it was like, why you need to focus on your dentistry or something like this, and it said like, because even though the guy is missing an eyebrow, the tooth is the first thing you notice.
Of
And then you
course.
look closer and the guy's like had one of his eyebrows shaved off too. So I think it's the same with you. You've got like the beard just captures people's attention, and I think it allows you to get away with more silliness with the
More
hair.
Pat Flynn nonsense. Right. Right
Correct.
on, brother. Right on.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
Well, good to be here, my dude. Good. Hey, real
yes.
quick, maybe we should explain for the audience kind of what we're doing. For those who don't know, on Alex's channel and mine, every week, Alex and I are going to come together for an episode like this, but it will be shared every other week, either on Alex's channel or mine. So if you want to get all the goodness of our collaborative efforts, then you should subscribe to both channels because it will just be featured on one platform or the other every other week because we're
Correct.
just trying to do a little back scratching here.
Absolutely.
Cool.
It's a little bit like divorce, like one week the kid goes to, one parent, the other week he goes to another, except
But
for
without the crying and trauma, right?
exactly
And
without
sending
the
the
crying.
dog back and forth between the two houses.
Exactly.
Either.
Without the crying, without the trauma, without the actual divorce, without the, so really it's nothing like a
without the
divorce.
shame, without the financial ruin, and so on
Correct.
and so forth. Right?
Exactly.
But other than those elements, exactly like divorce.
Exactly.
What are we talking about today?
All right. Well, I happened upon a video of an English rapper and YouTuber named KSI. I guess he's preparing for his first professional boxing bout. And I don't know what it is about these inexplicable success stories like KSI and Jake Paul and these other people who have gotten into boxing. But at least some of them seem to be getting good training, like Jake Paul. But this KSI fellow is presumably paying a lot of money to a coach and getting the results that you will see very shortly, which are, they leave something to be desired. So we're going to play the video very shortly of exactly what it is that we're talking about. But this is presumably training in preparation for his boxing match. Shall we play the video for the good people?
Yeah, let's do it. And let's say Pat Flynn is flying blind here. I have no idea who this guy is. So hopefully I'm not about to provoke some sort of Twitter war that I definitely cannot win in terms of follower size. But we're here for the excitement.
I hope that happens, actually. Not to Pat, but to
as
me.
The mob descends upon me. All right. Well, no offense to this guy. As always, when we do these critique or response videos, our goal isn't to just like blast somebody for the sake of blasting somebody. We hope to bring out some points that will be helpful for the audience for improving their own training, whether it's technique or programming. We want this to be educational. So here's the video. I'll pull it up. If you're just listening, you're going to have to obviously go to YouTube to see the video, but we'll try to explain as much as we can so you know what's going on, even if you're just listening. So yeah, go ahead, Alex. You're in control today, man.
All right. So here we are.
Under thigh, okay.
On your mark. 3, 2, 1. Yours. Good. Strong.
Yours.
Yours.
Oosh.
Oosh. Oosh. 3, 2, go. Walking down. 30.
Okay, so that was, for those who aren't watching, an attempt at a set of 3 front squats. So I've got a lot I want to say about this, Alex, but I want to let you go first this time.
All right. Well, first and foremost, yeah, I want to start off by saying I'm glad at the very least to see that squatting has come back in vogue, because I know for a very long time, a lot of the compound movements done with weighted implements, whether it was barbell, dumbbell, kettlebell, whatever it may be, was kind of on the fringes. Now, obviously, the last 20 years, things have started to change. So it's good to see that there are people who are doing that again, especially for boxing, because for a long time, the strength and conditioning approach for a lot of boxers was calisthenics only. In fact, Mike Tyson very famously didn't do any weight training, I think, at least in the early years of his boxing career. And he was still very ferocious. Now, I would say he was a ferocious fellow regardless. So I don't think it was only his devotion to calisthenics training that made him so. But nevertheless, it's good to see that there are people doing that. However, I question the use of quarter squats, particularly quarter front squats, for somebody who's not even squatting that much. It's not like they have no purpose, but generally speaking, the people who are doing quarter squats with front squats or back squats or what have you tend to go very, very heavy. And I think this guy would be much better served by full range of motion squat. I don't see the need to do the quarter squat at all.
Okay, so my first question about this was this supposed to be a quarter squat, or was this supposed to be a front squat that just happened to be a quarter squat? Because there's a difference there, right? Intentions matter, especially for coaches. But I'm with you. The science on this is actually the science, which nobody is allowed to disagree with.
Exactly.
The science on this is pretty clear that for the majority of contexts, squat depth does matter, but it doesn't matter in exactly the way that a lot of people think it does. So, for example, you don't have to go full range of motion all the way down for a squat to be effective for strength and muscle, especially. But you do have to, it seems, to go at least to parallel. And in some cases, if strength and or muscle is your goal, it might make sense to actually not go as far down as you possibly can, but maybe just go to parallel or slightly below if it allows you to maintain better technique overall and move more weight, because the stimulus is pretty much the same. However, if you're not hitting parallel and you're only doing quarter squats, totally different story. Really does not seem to be, according to the science, nearly as effective, at least when it concerns strength or muscle. But somebody might be like, well, I'm just trying to do these quarter squats to give them some explosive jumping power or something like that. And then I would say there's probably a million other better things you could do than not great technique, kind of heavy, I guess, quarter front squat. So either way, I don't really see a good argument to be made for what we just saw, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I had to take a guess, and I'm going to try to be charitable here because I have no clue who this coach is or
no, you should always try and put things in the worst possible light, Alex. Why?
I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna start off being charitable, and then I'm gonna ruin the charity that I've just given these people, and I'm going to be as mean as possible. No, on the one hand, okay, on the worst possible side of things, it could just be that the coach has no business actually doing strength coaching, and maybe this is like a boxing coach, like, hey, here's what so-and-so said to do, and they have no real expertise. I have no clue because I have no clue who this coach is. The other thing could be that it is a strength coach who is just trying to get him just strong enough without getting him injured, because there are examples. For instance, I think it was, I don't remember the name of the coach. I think there was a sprinter, and I believe it was Ben Johnson. Way back in the day, his coach would have him do heavy, I believe it was like heavy quarter squats, but this guy was doing it with like 600 pounds. And it was for, his explosive power and speed. And I guess the reduced range of motion reduced the likelihood that he would get injured because his main sport was sprinting. So there was only so much range of motion that was really needed and what have you. But we're talking about somebody who is like one of the best sprinters in the world and one of the best sprinting coaches in the world. So there is a certain amount of like executive decision making that happens in a relationship like that, where you can justify something. KSI has these skinny legs. He's doing he's not an athlete by trade. He's a rapper and a YouTuber, which is like
you.
Yeah, precisely. Exactly. Only I think my rap skills might be better. I'm not sure. I don't know KSI all that well. But
this is an invitation.
Yes, exactly. We're gonna do a rap battle, and I will hopefully prevail. But I just don't know, because it's not like there's nothing that quarter squats are good for, but I think for most people, it's just not something they need to consider. They need to consider moving to a full range of motion. I shudder to think that maybe the coach is not even thinking that far. Maybe he's just like, well, this is all he can do, so that's all we're going to do. Meaning, rather than trying to make him better at something, he's just saying, I'm going to just throw something at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, and again, there's two ways to see this. There's the way to see it that he's prescribing quarter squats, which again, I don't exactly see a good argument for that. But that might be seeing this in a better light. Or you could see it as him prescribing front squats. And then it's much worse because clearly this is not a good front squat or even useful in terms of what we would want to get out of a front squat. Not just because of the depth, but let's pick out some other things that I think are really important. Alex, let's pull the video back up and just watch it one more time. In terms of just some technical aspects. This is he's doing a barbell front squat.
Okay.
And he I don't know, maybe he has some limited shoulder and thoracic mobility. He's crossing his arms rather than.
So look at that. That's
so one thing I want to know is the setup. This is really important. Sometimes people in the kettlebell world and the powerlifting world get made fun of because they have this like very ritualistic, systematic setup. But this is which he clearly doesn't have. He kind of just stands under the bar and kind of wobbles back, and he even widens his stance at one point. So it's clear he doesn't have any sort of systematic way of setting up this exercise. But here's why having a systematic way of setting up an exercise matters, right? When it comes to strength and performance, standardizing and fixing your technique makes all the difference. If you don't standardize and fix your technique, you're not practicing a pattern consistently enough to really build that neuromuscular efficiency, right? Which is critical to performance. And what this amounts to in a squat is like, if you're not setting up with a systematic, ritualized way, you might be squatting with, slightly different technique pretty much every time, wider, more narrow, feet not appropriately lined up. And that at best is going to inhibit your rate of progress. So it is really, really important to take setup seriously. And I don't see any sort of seriousness in this setup. So even though it might seem a little silly that people tend to like really overemphasize how you set up an exercise to the extent of literally having like a ritual with chanting and stuff like that, right? There's a reason that's done among the best coaches because fixing and standardizing your technique is critical, not just for performance, but also safety. So that's the one thing I wanted to point out right there. This is clearly not the case happening right here. But if you're interested in getting somebody as strong as possible, training them as really, I wouldn't even say elite athlete. You just want to just train them well as an athlete, no matter what. How you set up an exercise demands a lot of attention. Squats, swings, presses, doesn't matter. Fix and standardize that technique always. Alex, back to you.
Here's another thing I want to point out. I've never seen anybody attempt to spot a squat like that. Now, it's probably a little more challenging to spot a front squat than it is a back squat. But basically, the way you do it is you stand behind them so that if they can't stand up, you can provide them just enough assistance so that under their own power, they can push the weight up as much as possible. But there's no way to do that when you have the absolute worst leverage possible and you're just over on the other side doing God knows what.
Yeah.
I don't know
if for people who aren't watching, the coach is literally standing on the side of the athlete, Mr. KSI, with his hand on one end of the barbell, which is preposterous if he's thinking that this is a way that you should spot this technique. That's obviously ridiculous and could lead to any number of catastrophic effects if he actually just starts lifting on one side of the barbell, right? That don't need to be explained. It's obvious that this is just a stupid way to go about trying to spot this exercise.
This is what leads me to believe that this is maybe not a professional coach because, like seeing this sort of a thing. First of all, if you're not sure that your athlete it's not his job to lift weights. What he's trying to do is, prepare for a boxing match. The last thing you want to have happen is for your athlete to get hurt in training. So if he's doing this and, potentially setting himself up to get hurt in training, and you're like, well, I don't know how well he's going to be able to do this move, so I'm going to spot it in the worst way possible. Like there's no sense to any of it. So this strikes me as horribly amateurish. And it's sort of like, I wrote about this on Twitter. I was like, to all the coaches out there who think they need to have the absolute best education possible and the best skills possible to make a ton of money as a coach, I guarantee you this guy is making more money than you, and he sucks as a coach because like he just got a good connection. So, you know, and I'm not saying, by the way, that people should not get a good education if they want to be trainers. They absolutely should. But this shows that a lot of times it's more who you know rather than what you know when it comes to making the big bucks, because there's no way KSI is not a multimillionaire paying this guy countless thousands of dollars for his coaching. Well, I don't want to say expertise, but we'll say opinions. And this is what he's getting. He's getting quarter squats, spotting that wouldn't save anybody, and you know, a hefty amount of risk for something that he doesn't really even have to do in order to prosper in a boxing match. So yeah,
let's
I don't know what
quick
to say.
out. Yeah. Well, you've said it, my friend. You said
right.
it. You said it in saying it. Let's I can't. I'm sorry, Alex. My eyesight is not good, but it does seem to me like he's wearing basketball shoes.
I was trying to see
what's his footwear like, and the reason I'm pointing this out is his squatting mechanics are. It seems like they're distorted in a way that they would be if somebody was wearing, you know, very padded, very cushiony shoes where the weight is being pushed forward. But my eyesight is not great, at least not when the video is this small. But you can tell, like, right away, right, there's a lot of translation of the knees going forward with the squat. And the front squat is, you know, it's different than the back squat. With the back squat, it really does start in many ways closer to a hinge. The front squat, you really just want to think of kind of pulling your hips straight down between your legs. But there's what's going on here is it's not really that. It's more of this sort of just translating the knees forward.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of flexion in the ankles, but not enough of just pulling yourself kind of straight down between your legs. And what can and this is obviously not ideal in terms of mechanics and strength and all that.
Yeah.
And what might be feeding into this, if my eyes are not betraying me, are just the shoes that he's wearing. Right. If you have shoes that have a lot of heel, a lot of cushion in the heel, while those might be, you know, fine for whatever, if you're playing basketball, they're not the types of shoes that you want to be squatting on. Minimalist footwear is ideal. You know, get as a little bit of, you know, Converse or Chuck Taylors or the Five Fingers or what have you. I just use like cheap little, like literally like $7 shoes from Amazon, right? So you get that nice, solid, flat rooting to the ground. You can have good, even distribution of weight. You do want weight not just on your heels, but of course you do want to be driving through your heels. You do want the big toe planted, and having that solid foundation where you're not kind of squatting on a slant is going to do a lot to make sure that you have proper squatting mechanics. So again, I don't know, maybe his shoes are fine and there's something else throwing his mechanics off, but they are off here, and that you have more of a kind of knee bending exercise and you actually have a proper squat, right?
Yeah.
It's in some ways closer to how you would want the mechanics to be for a push press than an actual front squat. So if you're doing like a push press, you actually do kind of want just this sort of forward knee translation, ankle flexion, and then kind of bump the weight up. But that is not the mechanics you want for a front squat, where you're getting the kind of simultaneous knee and hip flexion. So you kind of more pulled straight down between your legs. It's an important difference to keep in mind.
Yeah. It's hard to tell. I mean, I can't tell if they're supposed to be weightlifting shoes or if they're basketball shoes. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, you know, people who do Olympic weightlifting have a heel lift, so that helps them in a variety of ways. So maybe that's what it is. But who knows? Because it hasn't done him any favors so far. So I really doubt that the expensive footwear is what he needs. I think he needs to be able to just.
And having a heel lift can help you if your mechanics are already good, right?
Yeah.
For performance reasons. That said, if you're having issues with what we're describing, it may be related to you just needing a different pair of shoes, right?
Yeah. Another thing too, the more I look at it, I paused it at this specific spot. I don't know if it's just the angle of the camera or not, but it looks like his feet aren't even in the same line. Like it looks like his right foot looks like it's back further than his left one. Which again,
goes back to the setup issue.
Yeah, exactly. It's a setup issue. It's also, again, it's an issue of the coaching, because like if I'm coaching somebody, I was looking at a client's video submission yesterday, and I noticed a difference in or disparity in how his legs were moving when he was doing a squat. And that was one of the first things I noticed, because it should be glaring to anybody, I mean, who has even like a modicum of coaching experience. And so that's something that's kind of important. You really don't want you to be building up these kind of imbalances in like in an exercise like the squat, especially if you're trying to load it up, as it appears that they're trying to do here. So yeah, I saw that and I was like, I need to stop the tape at exactly this point, because we have to take a look at this. Again, I'm not sure if that's the case or if it's just like an illusion, but it's par for the course at this point, because everything
now, I would just say, in terms of exercise selection, like if the intention was to do quarter squats and go for power or something like that, and this is the sort of mechanics you want, just use jerks or push presses. Just do like leave this whole whatever this is aside and just use jerks. Awesome exercise, right?
Totally. Yeah, I have no idea. Let's play this tape again, because I'm not sure. I want to see.
I will see if we get any other points. Otherwise, I want to summarize what we've had so far. So yeah, let's see it one more time.
Yeah. So this is the bottom position there. I really can't tell. We'll play the rest.
3, 2, go. Walking down 30.
Yeah. So there it is.
Yeah. So to summarize the points that I think have come out in this conversation that should be of interest to the user and Mr. KSI, should you see your video. By the way, yeah, congrats, and for your entry into boxing. That's very cool. And we hope that your training is successful, all that good stuff. And our critiques for this front squat, if that's what it is, are as follows. One, exercise selection, it matters. If you're going to squat and you really want to squat for strength and muscle, and of course, these are different things depending on the types of volume and density that you employ. But generally, if you're not squatting to at least parallel, might be wasting your time largely, right? And then as long as you're parallel, you might want to go even deeper than that, but you don't necessarily have to in terms of if the pursuit is strength or muscle. If you are just for whatever reason wanting to do this sort of, it's not even really a quarter squat at this point. It really is mechanically more like a push press or jerk. I would say just do push press or jerks. Just seems to me a much better, more purposeful exercise if your goal is to develop power within that specific type of pattern. So I would say, if that was your intention, then there's better ways to get this done. Standardize and fix technique. Setup matters. There was a lot of issues mechanically going on. A lot of them had to do with just not having a ritualized way of setting up. So that way you're using the same stance, making sure your feet are actually in proper alignment and that the mechanics are on point. And then a point we weren't sure about, but might be playing into the kind of distorted mechanics, is paying attention to footwear. A lot of times people's issues with squatting mechanics can see improvements if we just, have less stuff between our foot and the actual floor. Alex, your final thoughts.
Yeah. More than anything, I think if you're going to be training if you're using strength training to help you or to assist you at some sort of an athletic endeavor, you don't need to get super fancy in most cases. You need to kind of stick to the basics and perform them properly, and make sure, obviously, that your exercise selection is something that is going to help you and have a carryover into what your activity is ultimately going to be. There's not actually a problem with quarter squats or, different oddball variations of different movements, but there has to be a good reason for it. And, based off of some of the other stuff that we're seeing in the video, such as the odd spotter situation and other things, it doesn't seem that it is intentional and focused on trying to build up a certain characteristic or even something that's sports specific that you think you can modify this basic exercise and make it more effective. It seems very haphazard. And, if I were setting up for my first boxing match that was going to be televised and everything like that, I would certainly not want to do anything haphazard in my training.
And there, my friends, is your weekly McNugget of wisdom.
Oh, yeah. The McNugget of wisdom.
Right there, my
Beautiful.
friends.
Folks, if you were listening to this and not watching it, Pat is displaying what can only be described as one of the most classic McDonald's toys of all time, and this is
one of the greatest American treasures of all time.
God, dude, I miss those days. Honestly, the '90s where they had like the McDonald's toys were just like pertaining to the franchise itself, and they weren't like. Here's another one. Who we got here?
True American greatness.
Yeah, what is this? This looks like some sort of, again, they're McNugget toys with various different Halloween costumes on, is what it looks like. The previous one was like a jack-o'-lantern. This one appears to be some sort of a, oh, nice. It comes apart.
The thing that gets me, Alex, is that like people kept making toys after these things were brought into
like
existence.
as if
it's like people kept making movies after RoboCop came out. It's like give it up, move on.
Yeah,
it's done.
Like it's been done. Like
perfection has been attained.
Yeah, why bother continuing? Like you're just going to be a part of the rapidly declining valley that we're about to set into. And spoiler alert, we've been there for quite a long time because movies nowadays suck by and large. So yeah, stick with the 80s and 90s movies and you'll be happy. And likewise with the toys too.
Good stuff, man. All right, good episode today. For all of you who are listening, wherever you're listening, you can get linked up with me over at 101kettlebellworkouts.com. That gets you 101 free kettlebell workouts. And if you're listening on my end, Alex, where's the best place to get linked up with you?
I'll go to 9minutechallenge.com. That is the number 9minutechallenge.com and get my surprise 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Goodbye.